What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a good weekend. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at DreamRare. You can follow me on Twitter at Legendary Energy. Check out my website, legendary.vision. And I'm going to wait about 20 more seconds for people to come into this live stream so I can talk about the breaking news that Iraq has defeated terrorist groups and officially declared victory. Alright, so that's also my new song, Bob Ross. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that stuff. And I want to let you guys know as well, I am now accepting Litecoin and Bitcoin donations. If you would like to donate in that form, it's pinned to the top of my page. I have my donation link pinned to the top of my page always if you would like to support. If not, don't worry about it. Your comments and shares and likes mean the world to me anyway. But I do have Litecoin and Bitcoin donation links. Will be pinned right at the top of my Facebook page. So for the people who are asking, because I got a lot of messages about that. Now on to what's important. It's breaking news yesterday. It should be one of the biggest stories in the world, especially since news sites like CNN, before Trump got into office, before no one was really paying attention to politics at all. If you turned on CNN, all they were talking about was ISIS. Whoa, ISIS is taking over the Middle East. ISIS took over Iraq. ISIS took over Syria. ISIS. And you're like, oh my God, like, I'm so scared. Take more of my tax dollars so you can build the military-industrial complex. Please, save me, U.S. government. Take, hundreds of billions of dollars because we need you to save us from ISIS. So as soon as President Trump gets into office, and I do want to say there's a lot of haters out there, Trump haters, who say, oh, it has nothing to do with President Trump. It's completely irrelevant. It's not completely irrelevant, and I want to, before I explain what happened, which is Iraq and Syria Iraq completely declaring victory over ISIS, and Syria has all but declared a full victory over ISIS. It's going to happen soon, if it hasn't happened already. President Trump did two major different things from any president recently. One, he put in General Mattis as the Secretary of Defense, I believe his title is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you could Google it, check it out. But Secretary Mattis is the first actual veteran to serve in that position. It was usually just a politician who was making military decisions for the people. And President Trump put a very well-respected veteran in that place. And also, he stopped the funding to moderate rebels, which was a Hillary Obama-era strategy or tactic of regime change war. And regime change war is very, very costly because we were lied to about all of them. In Libya, we killed Gaddafi, who was the leader of Libya, giving his people free, I believe, education, housing, giving them all gold-backed currency. And I'm not saying he was perfect. I'm not saying he was great. That's up to your interpretation and your research. But it's undebatable that it is way worse in Libya now. They went in, they killed the leader. They said, we're going to bring democracy. Everyone needs our democracy. Yeah, we're going to spread democracy all over the Middle East. They killed the leader. And meanwhile, jihadists and terrorists and extremists are taking over in Libya, certain areas, and they're now slave trading, and there's reports of organ harvesting. Very disgusting, terrible stuff happening in Libya, thanks to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's regime change policy. And this also was disastrous for Syria and Iraq. I mean, you watch Saturday Night Live, you watch the news, and they're like, Russia and Putin and Charlottesville, and everyone's like, oh my God, Republicans and Trump are the worst. Yeah, we get it. We can all agree on certain things that they talk about. Yeah, ignorance, racism has no place in America, absolutely. But does that change the fact that during the Obama administration, they expanded into 7 different countries, and they're dropping bombs? In 2016, I think it was over 25,000 bombs in 7 different countries. And I'm not a complete pacifist. I think we could obviously stop dropping so many bombs. But I'm not the type of person that's like a full-on, oh, we got to just leave and, everything's the United States' fault. I know we're going to have to fight certain wars in certain places, but as he's dropping all these bombs in countries, it's not like the terrorist groups that we claim that we're fighting are just disappearing. During the Obama administration, ISIS was gaining momentum all over the place. So we're dropping all of these bombs, and the one thing that we're dropping the bombs for, we're not even accomplishing. Like I said, I'm not saying dropping bombs is the greatest thing in the world. I don't think it is at all. I'm a very peaceful person, but I'm also a realist. To defeat certain terrorist groups and maybe countries at certain times, we will have to use force. And we were using all this force, but doing nothing, doing the opposite. ISIS took over multiple major cities in Syria. ISIS took over multiple major cities in Iraq. The news was putting out all this propaganda. Oh, Aleppo, Aleppo, look at this little kid, Aleppo. And they had like this picture of this bloody kid. I'm sure you've seen him from Aleppo in Syria. Meanwhile, his dad came out months later and said that kid that CNN is using and that the American mainstream news is using, he's pro-Syrian government. So the Americans took and propped up this little kid, according to this report. Of course, I'm not there. I'm not the father. I'm not the kid. So I can't tell you 100%. I always try to keep it as honest as possible. But many reports said that the father said they used my son as an anti-Syrian government propaganda, but we're pro-Syrian government because we want the Syrian government to win. So Iraq, it's an official news. It's in all the newspapers, but they whisper the truth and they scream out the lie. It's what they've been doing for a long time now, and at least definitely the last couple years. So, Trump, Russia, Trump, Flynn, Charlottesville, Roy Moore, and everyone's like, yeah, Roy Moore, I watch Jimmy Kimmel all the time. Meanwhile, they're like, oh yeah, remember ISIS, who we complained about for the last 8 years? Oh yeah, they're completely defeated in Iraq. And it's not a coincidence that this happened under the Trump administration. The two main policy changes that he had has everything to do with it. One, I've spoken to people who have been ex-military, and they've told me a lot of people respect Trump, even the ones who don't like Trump's maybe policies and who don't like Trump's speaking and the things that he says. They respect the fact that he put General Mattis in a high-level military position because now a lot of the strings were cut from the U.S. military. They used to have to listen to some random politician make military decisions. So when we're making all these mistakes, it's not a coincidence because you have non-military people leading the military. So he did that, which is huge. Excuse me. And he also stopped the regime change wars. And this is not a right-wing policy. This is like a left-leaning policy. This is an anti-war policy. This should be something that everybody unites around. But the reason that people haven't united around it is because the news is lying about almost everything. They use the word Putin and Trump and Russia and Republican, and they could convince anyone to do anything. I mean, it's gotten so bad that we're stopping the regime change wars. Like I said, Iraq officially declared liberation from ISIS. During Obama's 8 years, ISIS grew and expanded and took over cities and countries. And during Trump's 8 months, 10 months, 11 months, ISIS is shrinking, and basically got kicked out of two of the biggest countries that they had a stranglehold on. Syria, they had multiple countries, and Iraq. And then when Trump says he wants a temporary travel ban, it's because in these countries, there has been such terrible foreign policy from the United States, we don't know who these people are. Just like he says, they don't have visas, they don't have documents. If they do have documents, they could be forged because the biggest terrorist group in the world took control of their entire cities. So when you talk about their passport agencies, if they don't have control of their cities and they're fighting a war, you're not going to get authentic documents at a time of extreme war. You're not going to get much of anything. So this is the question that we have to ask ourselves is, did the politicians and does the mainstream media even care about stopping terrorist groups? I mean, this is so ridiculous. If you watch any of these late night comedian show hosts or whatever, they make like little jokes, ISIS this, ISIS that, but they don't tell you the full story. On Twitter, they had a featured story that said, Canadian man blames a guy for being in ISIS. So the day, keep in mind, let that sink in. The day that ISIS was defeated in Iraq, that was not the featured story that got a lot of press. They featured a story about some random ignorant Canadian loser who called somebody ISIS that wasn't ISIS. Okay, wow, there's a loser and a racist, or not even racist because terrorist groups and religion is not a race, but there's a, whatever you want to call them, someone who's ignorant and mean and rude said something in Canada. That's the bombshell story on Twitter. That's what losers these people are. That's what fake feminists, fake activists, fake war activists, fake everything these people are. The day that the actual terrorist group is defeated, they feature a story about one loser in Canada who said something that people don't agree with. So all the fake activists are like, whoa, we got to stop racism in Canada. What about the fact that we just stopped the biggest terrorist group in the actual country where they're killing millions of people, chopping the heads off kids, and destroying whole cities? I mean, this is how dumb. It's so basic, it's so obvious. But I'm so sick and tired of the delusion, the hypocrisy, and the straight dishonesty. And they've convinced every person that hates Trump. And like I said, I don't care if you don't like Trump. That's fine. But if you're like incapable of having a conversation about it where I'm like, hey, I think Trump's not as bad as they say he is on the media. And you're like, oh my God, you're a Nazi because you think he's not as bad as they say. I didn't even say I voted for him. I didn't. I didn't even say I think he's the greatest thing ever, but I definitely think he's underrated. And now all these things are piling up. He just did an audit on the Department of Defense. The United States is going to audit the Department of Defense for the first time in U.S. history, according to some reports. I mean, come on. That's not a right-wing issue. Everybody should be like, wow, now we're going to actually find out where all the money's going. He's just making play after play after play after play, and he's getting zero credit for it. Meanwhile, just this last week, a Washington Post reporter put out a fake tweet about, oh, look, he's got no people in the audience, and it was a total fabrication. CNN put out a whole fake story. ABC had somebody fired, or CBS, I don't even know, the three letters, they all sound the same to me, has somebody fired for making a whole fake story. I mean, it's literal fake news. This week, everything that we say is true. They're literally lying about everything. Meanwhile, 2 years ago, the biggest story in the whole world was these terrorist groups. That's all they talked about on TV. Now that they're defeated, they don't care about it. Did these media sources and did these politicians even want to defeat terrorism? We have to multitask. Does the United States government make all the right decisions, and are we the victim in every single situation? No. The U.S. government and the U.S. military has made some mistakes in the past. Just like I said in Libya, they pretty much decimated the whole country thanks to Obama and Hillary and whatever people they had in place. And there's slavery now, and no one seems to really, maybe it's Trump's fault. No, it's not. It's Hillary and Obama's fault. And yes, the U.S. military has made mistakes, but is the U.S. the only problem? Is it the male American who's ruining the whole world? It's just not true. I mean, talk to an honest Muslim person. They'll say, stop, attacking my religion. Don't attack my character and who I am. That's completely disgusting and mean, and I don't for a second ever condone that or ever speak of it. God bless everyone, and God bless, your beliefs and your faith. But is there a radicalization of religions going on in the world? And is there, some people who are trying to have a global caliphate and chop off people's heads? It exists. So the fact that the left-leaning people don't even want to talk about it, and they just blame everything on America, that's not a full-scale solution. And the second that it's actually defeated, and it's a big deal, we're lucky here we don't have to deal with it because we're in the United States. But we have a president who's saving us from the long term of having to deal with that. Because guess what? Syria and Iraq can't go on Twitter and be fake feminists and fake activists because they've seen firsthand what these terrorist organizations really do. And you have to ask the question, once again, did the media and did these politicians even want to defeat ISIS? Because there's reports from Democratic Congresswomen, I say it all the time, look it up, she was on CNN with Jake Tapper, saying, I went to Syria, I spoke to everybody in Syria, and every single kid and person in Syria said, stop the U.S. government from funding terrorists. They're literally giving arms and weapons and money to terrorist organizations. This is the Obama and Hillary administration. When Hillary was Secretary of State and Obama was president, the Syrians were saying, it's Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and ISIS are getting weapons from the U.S. government. And no one cared. No one said anything about it. Just Tulsi Gabbard. God bless that woman. One of the best, by far the best Democrat. Just off the fact she did that. That alone is more of a revolutionary act than any of these losers on Twitter. Like, oh, I hate Trump. And everyone's like, 20,000 retweets. Oh, yeah, you're real revolutionary there. Real unique thought. Really helping people. But she said that the weapons and flows, either directly or indirectly, were going to terrorist organizations. Donald Trump, when he got into office, this is a direct change straight from him. It's not like I love or hate Trump. It's just the truth. If you let your hate for Trump or your love for Trump skew the facts, then you're not doing anybody any justice. But Trump went against their policy of funding these moderate rebels. And the Washington Post and the New York Times and the CNNs, they twisted the whole story and they said, oh, Trump is kowtowing to Putin because he doesn't want to do a regime change war in Libya. That's how disgusting these news sources are. That's why I say these things. Of course, opinion-wise, I don't care if you have a different opinion than me. I don't care if you're like pro-liberal values. That's great. I'm pro almost every liberal value. Gay marriage, equality, social justice, like a reform in the prison industry. Yeah, totally. Let's do it all. Let's get real liberal. But the fake liberal media, they pander to you with all these things. They're like, making all these racial divisive stuff, and they pander to your like hate and your insecurities, and you're like, oh, I'm reading them. And then you read about Syria and Iraq, and they just completely lie about the whole thing. They say, is Trump kowtowing to Putin because he doesn't want to turn Syria into Libya? Is Trump working for Putin just because he doesn't want to kill the leader and let terrorist groups, completely decimate millions of innocent people? No, he's not Russian because he wants to not kill a leader. How does that make you Russian? And that's how dumb people are. They'll believe anything. Oh, well, Putin likes water? I might as well kill myself now because I don't want to do the same thing as Putin. Not everything Putin does is bad. Not everything Trump does is bad. It's quite the opposite when it comes to Trump. Putin, I'm not that familiar with, but he's helping defeat ISIS. And that's what Trump said when he was running for office. He said, I don't want to fight Russia. I don't want to start World War III with Russia. Oh, so liberal. Hillary wanted to shoot down Russian aircrafts and start World War III with Russia. Wow, what a liberal value. And Trump said, hey, let's get along and work with Russia, defeat ISIS, and then we'll make a business deal there. Make sure Russia doesn't overstep, I won't overstep. And the media won't have it. They're like, no, we must kill the leader of Syria. We must make slave trade legal and organ harvesting legal in Syria. We need to let jihadists and terrorists take over Syria and kill a bunch of innocent Muslims and Christians and Jews. That's what the media wants. They just disguise it. And they're like, oh, is Putin? And then you have moron celebrities, even Jim Carrey, who acted like a big revolutionary, oh, I'm so intelligent. Oh, whoa, the universe works like this. And we're like, yeah, totally. He was on point. And then he's like, Trump and Putin. He put out a big meme. It's like, shut up, Jim Carrey. Stick to the universe stuff and stick to your, abstract views. I love those. But when you post a Putin meme and you have Morgan Freeman lying about it and Chelsea Handler, just screaming and tweaking out on Twitter every single day, this is what you get. You get literal slave trade. So that's why I'm, very energetic about it. Besides the fact I went for a walk and I just chugged the whole water and chugged an entire kombucha and then took a shot of apple cider vinegar. I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. But we're not talking about like, oh, this is my opinion and this is yours. We're talking about literal slave trade and organ harvesting in a country that no one's talking about. And you wanted to do the same thing in Syria and blame it on Putin when Putin's fighting terrorism in Syria. And let's not forget that it was Russia who allied with us in World War II to defeat Nazi Germany. And Donald Trump is the most pro-Israel president we've ever had. And I'm not getting into that whole debate now, but when you call Trump a Nazi, so Trump's a Nazi, even though he's pro-Israel, and the Nazis hated the Jews, and Russia helped us destroy the Jews, but he's a Nazi because he works with Trump, and Trump's Putin because he has a mind of his own and doesn't work on behalf of the military-industrial complex and the weapons lobbyists and whatnot. Sorry. This is how delusional the conversation is. And that's why no one wants to debate me. I talk to progressives, they don't want to debate me. Any but liberals, even conservatives like Ben Shapiro, I said, debate me. Let's talk about Trump and Russia. Because even Ben Shapiro, very smart guy, he lies about the Russia stuff too because he doesn't know what's going on. His feelings get involved, and Anomaly's facts don't care about Ben Shapiro's feelings. But no one wants to talk to me because they feel comfortable. They're like, well, it's Putin's fault, and Trump's working with Russia. Is so obnoxious because, like I said, bombshell story, ISIS has been defeated in Iraq. They're all but defeated in Syria. If the announcement hasn't come last week, it's going to come next week or this week because they've been removed from the major cities and they're barely on the outskirts of the country. It's not hard to defeat ISIS when you don't have other countries funding them and giving them weapons and giving them arms. We had a proxy war going on in Syria that no one understood about. And I'm not saying that everything's going to be perfect. We need to keep an eye on Bashar al-Assad, keep an eye on Iraq, keep an eye on Russia. I know other people that are helping the Syrian government is Iran and Turkey. So absolutely we should keep an eye on what's going on. I'm not saying to just be like, oh, let's let everyone do whatever. But we never get to the truth. And that's why I do these broadcasts, is because when you lie about everything, you never get to the truth. And I come through and I say something real and I get accused, oh, you hate women and you hate feminism. No, I love women. I love the LGBT community. I love feminism. But when you lie about everything and when you make everything a hashtag and make it so widespread and so far-fetched and start blurring the lines of what real abuse is and what real abuse isn't and what war is and what war isn't and what the truth is and what the truth isn't, that's when real victims don't get heard. That's when real people that are really oppressed don't get heard. So I'm not anti any of these things. I'm pro any of these things. I'm just telling you the news is using almost all of those to completely blur the lines. So if everything's racist, then nothing's racist. Someone posted a picture on one of my earlier things and said, what about this thing Roy Moore said? Let's talk about it. I'm not saying not to talk about it, but when you make up all these fake stories about Roy Moore and forged documents, and then when the real stuff comes, I'm not co-signing Roy Moore or any of his policies or anything he said. I don't really care. I don't live in Alabama. It's not really a big deal to me. None of this stuff is. I'm going to live my life and enjoy it regardless. But what I'm saying is, when you make up the stuff about Roy Moore, then you can't talk about the real stuff about Roy Moore and his real policies. When you make up stuff about Trump every single day and 93% of the coverage is negative, I mean, I might make a video this week about all the good things Trump did because they keep building up. Auditing the Department of Defense, stopping the regime change war. Those two things alone are more revolutionary than anything any other president's done. All the other presidents just talk pretty and take big checks from the banks, you know, in the Federal Reserve and from the military-industrial complex and from the pharmacy industry. And, you know, they have all these other interests and they're tied in. Trump is the revolution. I don't think everything he does is perfect, but he's a real CEO. It's like, a good example would be if every 8 years or every 4 years you get a new CEO at a company, except the CEO that comes to the company is a puppet. And they pretend to switch sides, like, oh, here's the new guy, here's the new guy, here's the new guy. But they're all doing the same exact thing. Trump is the wrecking ball. He's not doing the same thing. Even if you hate him with all your might, you think all his policies are bad, he's the worst person in the world, he's an abuser, blah, blah, blah. He's still not that person. It's just obvious. He is the change. He is the difference. He is the person that's not listening to other people. He's doing what he actually wants, and he's doing a lot of really good things, because a lot of the stuff that they want to talk about, everyone wants to be so politically correct and such a fake activist, like, oh, I'm so mad because I took an Uber home today and I just ordered delivery food and, you know, I feel bad. That's when the real victims get away with everything. So he's going at the hard issues that no one wants to talk about. Border security, travel security, radical terrorism, you know, even as far as like government programs that weren't working out like they were supposed to. I mean, these are the things that he's doing. So when it comes to Iraq, they're completely liberated. When it comes to Syria, they're almost completely liberated, if not completely liberated. And I don't want to hear, I'm down to debate anybody that says, oh, that happened because of Obama, or that's a rollover from the Democrats, or that's a rollover from Hillary's. No, it's not. It's 100% Trump's doing. It's 100% because of the Trump administration and General Mattis and all of the stuff that a Trump presidency brought. And I could prove it, and I could argue, and I could debate anybody on it, but they don't want to debate me. They probably just want to sit behind computers and write for USA Today. I searched it, and they're like, is Trump really to credit? It's like they can't even talk about terrorism being defeated without doing some passive-aggressive, like, should we really give Trump credit for defeating the most, you know, ruthless terrorists that the 21st century's ever seen? It's like, just shut up. For 5 minutes, just shut up. Take a shower, you know, do a dance, put on some music, and just stop being such crabs, low energy hater crabs. Because at a certain point, if you're hating somebody who's auditing the Department of Defense, if you're putting all of your energy and all of your effort into trying to tear somebody down who is stopping the military-industrial complex and changing their route and at least making people think about things and destroying the mainstream media and taking down political correctness and basically doing a lot of things that no one else... If you're using all your energy to tear someone down like that, you're the scumbag. You're the person that everyone's going to remember as, wow, you spent the last 5 years of your life trying to tear down one of the greatest presidents that we've ever had, who wasn't a Democrat, who wasn't a Republican, who's destroying the two-party system, who's raising awareness to all of this stuff and allowing us to have a candidate in 2020 and 2024 and 2028. That could be anybody. Anybody could win now. The whole game has been changed. Trump changed the whole game. Even if you hate everything he's ever done, most people, when I tell them, like, I explain this, I'm like, you know, even though you might not like all this stuff, don't you think in 2020 and 2024, anybody can win now, not just a normal Democrat? And they're like, yeah, I think so. I know so, because he changed the whole game. So, I mean, if you're spending all your energy just lying about this stuff, this is how slave trade in Libya goes unnoticed. This is how real sexual abuse and real rape goes unnoticed. This is how acid attacks and terrorism and defeating terrorism goes unnoticed. This is how all of this stuff that everyone claims they're trying to stop, you're actually blurring the lines and ruining it all by just throwing the Putin-Trump Republican line on everything. It's like, but what do you think about Roy Moore? It's like, well, okay, we could talk about that. Let's have a conversation about that. Let's not lie about that. But then let's talk about everything. Let's not blame everything. Everything's not Russian just because Trump did it and Hillary didn't do it. They've trapped you and controlled you like a little wind-up doll into, like, you're like, I love slavery and I love being enslaved and I love regime change wars where they kill a leader because I like Hillary and Obama. Like, that's how low they have taken it, to the point where they're not talking about Libya. They're not talking about Iraq. They're not talking about Syria. I mean, why am I the only one talking about this? And I know there's news sources that are covering it, but they'll cover it and they'll throw it under the bus real quick, and then they'll put 50 other fake stories and all these other anti-Trump stories above it. But this is what they were talking about for the last 8 years and what they scared us into. This was the big scary thing. Now that they're defeated, no one seems to care. So I have a question for all liberals, for progressives and conservatives and Republicans. I don't care, Fox News, CBS, ABC, I don't care. Did some of these news sources even want to defeat terrorism? They care more about hating Donald Trump and stopping Donald Trump and making Donald Trump look bad than they do about actually solving any problems. I don't care if Hillary Clinton solves a problem. I don't care if Donald Trump solves a problem. I don't care if, it's an organization, it's a feminist, or a Rachel Maddow solves a problem. I don't care who it is, because I don't have this massive ego and massive complex, like, I need to tear this guy down, and I'm better than him, and the world's going to be great when Trump leaves. No, it's not. You're wrong, you're lied to, you're foolish, you're wasting your time, and you're ruining everything. So just be objective, because if Hillary Clinton came through and audited the Department of Defense and stopped a regime change war and did all this stuff, I wouldn't have screamed, Russia, 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 Russia. I would have been like, oh, wow, Hillary's really stepping up. Like, maybe Hillary got to that position, used the freedom that we have in 2017, and was like, you know what, F these people, I'm going to keep it real. I would have been like, dope, good job, Hillary Clinton. Like, good job, Barack Obama. I don't care who does it. I'm just sick of how they turn this into a video game and a TV show. Like, people watch so many movies and TV shows, they think this is a TV show. Trump's the big bad guy, and Obama's the big hero. He's going to save everybody. And Hillary's the woman. She's such a strong woman. She's going to save me. No, they lied about the whole movie. They painted this TV show and this movie for you, and they lied about every character. They gave you the complete inverse reality of who these people are. They told you Trump was the big bad bully, and you can't get over it because they programmed it into people's heads to think that. And it's like the second he does all this good stuff, people are like, but he did that, but he did that, but he did that. It's like, people just stop for 2 seconds and realize the whole painting that they've painted for us has been a complete fake illusion. And it's crashing for the better, because there's nothing more beautiful than real life. There's nothing more beautiful than reality and terrorism being defeated, and people that are Muslim, and people that are Christian, and people that are Jewish, and people that are agnostic and atheists coexisting and living in a community, in a society that isn't being threatened by a radicalization of another religion. So I'm trying to help people of all races and religions. Syria, they celebrate Christmas. They have a big Christmas tree there. They're not even, they're very open, as are many countries. There's Christians, Jews, Muslims, and everyone lives peacefully. So that's the reality, and that's what happens when we focus on reality and we have hard conversations about issues, about race, religion, gender, and just stop talking about them in total and just be like, is it right? Is it wrong? It doesn't matter what the person looks like or what they, believe in, but it matters what they're going to do, what they're acting on, and, how it's going to result for other people around them. So this is the reality. ISIS completely defeated in Iraq. Almost, if not all, completely defeated in Syria. 2 countries where they had a lot of territory. And this has happened under a year of the Trump presidency. Let's talk about it. Let's celebrate it. Let's stop the fake news and crying and screaming and blaming everything on Russia, because it makes absolutely no sense. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to post my links below. I'm going to post my new song below as well if you want to bang it on Spotify. If not, that's cool. Also, Litecoin and Bitcoin donations, I'm going to post that in the link too. If you would like to show love in that way, that's cool. A few people have been asking me if I'm into crypto, and I'm feeling the vibes, definitely. Thank you guys so much. Also, I'm going to post my email list in the description too, or the comments, and it's the last chance. Sign up for the email list tomorrow, Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm going to blast out a Christmas email blast to everybody. Thank you so much. Incredible year, amazing year. I appreciate you guys for listening, tuning in, and I'll be back later this week.